Do I have a story to tell you? Hey guys, and welcome to our beautiful campsite here in the Kentucky Horse Park Campground near Lexington, Kentucky. You can see we have a spacious grassy site with a concrete parking pad, plenty of room for old Seymour there, and our 25-foot Airstream travel trailer. We have a picnic table and a fire pit, water and electric connections, and we are surrounded by many beautiful trees. This video is all about flexibility and being able to pivot when you're dealt with a bad situation. Now, we had big plans this week to go to Notre Dame, South Bend, Indiana, the home of the Fighting Irish. But then life happened. Well, I hate to say this. I really hate to say this, but we got some trouble here with Seymour. We stopped here at Buc-ee's and filled the tank with diesel, and we cranked the truck, pulled over here in the corner of the parking lot. Everything was absolutely normal. We went inside the trailer, had our 2 barbecue sandwiches from Buc-ee's. I came back outside, cranked the truck. It ran for about 20 seconds and then suddenly shut off, which it has never done before. And now it just won't start. Life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. So I have a theory that the FICM, the fuel injector control module, has failed. Just a theory, but I guess we'll find out in the morning. I could come up with some very crude and offensive jokes based around that whole FICM terminology, but I will restrain myself from doing so. Now, if you're not familiar with Buc-ee's, allow me to educate you. Buc-ee's,
it's like a gas station theme park. I mean, they have a mascot, comes around and greets you.
Buc-ee. Celebrity encounter.
I know.
It's a festive atmosphere in here.
Yeah.
We talked to the management of Buc-ee's, and although Buc-ee's typically does not allow overnight parking for RVs, the manager there was very accommodating, understood our predicament, and just told us to take our time and do whatever we might need.
Trying to put me in a relaxed state of mind. I mean, I do want to go back to sleep. I mean, wake up from the nightmare.
There's nothing like waking up from a peaceful night's sleep and then suddenly realizing you have a major problem to solve right away.
Okay, what city are you in or near? If you're unsure, say, I don't know.
Was that a dream? Oh no, that was reality. So we made 2 phone calls. The first to the local Ford dealership to see if they had a service center and they might be able to get parts for us. The second to AAA. We have AAA roadside assistance, and it's the AAA Plus that includes our RV, our Airstream travel trailer.
I mean, it sounds like it's trying to crank.
It sounds like a dying moose.
Okay. That's an excellent description.
So, as part of this roadside assistance, they offer different services. AAA suggested that we start with a battery and electrical service. I agreed as a first step because I thought maybe they would have some type of equipment that I didn't have, and maybe we'd be able to diagnose what was going on. Our batteries were only a couple of years old. I thought, you know, maybe we'll start out with the battery guy and see if he can diagnose the issue. Well, when the battery guy showed up, I knew instantly that this was not going to work.
This guy's doing his best, but you don't use a Kia to jumpstart an F-250.
She cannot take much more, Captain.
This is a huge waste of time.
So since the battery guy was not able to solve the problem, we called AAA back and escalated the situation, and they sent out a tow truck. Now here's where things start to get kind of crazy. They sent one tow truck to tow both our truck and Airstream, which is fine, but as you imagine, this is a pretty big job. So this guy shows up, and he was absolutely great. I want to give a shout out to Bradley at Classic Towing, because he did a fantastic job towing our 49-foot long rig using one vehicle. First step was to get Seymour onto the flatbed. Then the second step was to hitch up our Airstream to his long tow truck. So I was talking to Bradley about this, and he said, I've done this 3 times before, but this is the longest setup that I have ever towed in my life. And in fact, he said, if you don't mind, I'd like to take some photos just to document this experience and show other people what we managed to do here. So once he had everything squared away, it was time to tow the vehicle to the Ford dealership. As you might imagine, it was a little bit of a white knuckle tow, but Bradley managed to make it out of Buc-ee's with everything in one piece, and then we got down to the Ford dealership, and he had to maneuver into the dealership parking lot, through the parking lot, around the maze of cars. At times he had to back up the entire rig, and then finally he backed our trailer up into a spot in the corner of the Gates Ford parking lot. Now, if you think backing into a campsite is challenging, imagine doing this job. Then we dropped Seymour off the tow truck, and it was time for the Gates Ford guys to take over.
But they do have cars.
Having fun yet?
You know it.
They were great in that they worked our truck into their schedule on a busy Friday afternoon because they knew that we were traveling through the area. And sure enough, it turned out to be the FICM. The FICM is the fuel injector control module that sends voltage to all the injectors in our diesel engine. And if they do not receive the correct voltage, the engine just simply won't start, and everything kind of falls apart, sadly. Oh, and by the way, there happened to be a UAW, or Union Auto Workers, strike announced the day that Seymour died. And so parts were becoming very difficult to find. There were no FICMs in town in Richmond, And our best bet really was to go back to Bulletproof Diesel, where we got our original Fickum put into Seymour. I called Bulletproof Diesel, spoke to Jacob there. He was great. He understood our situation. He said that what happens sometimes with these things is that the power supply within the Fickum will fail, and they will cover it under warranty if that does happen. Now, we had had that particular part in our truck for more than 6 years now, so it simply just gave up the ghost. And when the Fickum fails, everything electrical goes. Basically, it all falls apart. So Jacob agreed to rush us overnight a brand new Bulletproof Diesel Fickum for us to swap out into our truck. Now, with that said, because it was the weekend, we were not able to get our truck repaired until Monday morning. We are going to rally, and we're going to make the most of this weekend. Sure, Notre Dame would have been nice, but I have a feeling Eastern Kentucky will be equally nice. We decided we would rent a car in Richmond and take it to any football game that we could find. Understand that if we could not find some form of transportation, we were looking at a long, long weekend stuck in the Ford dealership parking lot, which is not exactly Paris, France. Well, guess what? It's pretty tough to rent a car on a Friday afternoon in Richmond, Kentucky. There were no rental cars available anywhere in the area. Ford dealership was out of their loaner vehicles. The local Enterprise Rent-A-Car and so forth were all booked, all sold out. And after about 3 hours of searching, Christy found one car over in National Car Rental near the airport in Lexington. So we needed to book an Uber ride to the airport. Got on Uber. No Uber drivers would accept us to give us a ride to the airport, okay? I mean, like, for whatever reason, we weren't able to find a ride on Uber. So I downloaded the Lyft app, put in for a ride to the airport. Ding, my phone chimed, and someone had agreed to take us to the airport. Heavens be praised. I looked down at the Lyft app and it says, your driver Elvis will be arriving soon. So I'm like, that's kind of interesting. Okay, so this white little minivan pulls up, doors slide open, and I got in and said, calling Elvis. And sure enough, the guy's name was Elvis. I mean, he seemed very quiet and soft-spoken. And he said, I see that you've got a camper there. What happened? You guys have car trouble? And we said, yeah, but you know, we're going to the airport now. And Elvis asked me, are you just giving up and flying back home? And we said, no, we've actually got a rental car at the airport. We're just gonna go to the airport, rent a car, and so we'll have something to use this weekend. And Elvis thought about it for a moment and he said, well, it's kind of a shame for you guys to go all the way over to the airport and rent a car just for that. He said, I've got a truck. You can just borrow my truck this weekend and that'll be fine. And we said, Elvis, are you sure about that? We really only just met. And he said, yeah, it's fine. It's my dog truck. Hey.
Hi there. You're so pretty.
Some good looking dogs.
So do you want, we can write our names and phone numbers down for you?
You just won't call them? You won't have it.
Or,
Sure.
Oh, just text you. Yeah.
Now, I know this is a little crazy. Other people may not share this philosophy, but I think sometimes God, the universe, the simulation, whatever you want to call it, puts people in your path, in your life, connects you with people, and you know, you make a choice, I guess, based upon your gut instinct, and you either follow through with the connection or you don't. But I don't know, it seemed like a totally sincere guy. Everything he said checked out. Really probably saved us 4 hours of time, because it would have been an hour down there filling out the paperwork, an hour back, then on Monday the same rigmarole.
Right.
And not to mention the expense of the rental car. So Thank you, Elvis. So behind me, you see our new truck, courtesy of Elvis, here in Kentucky. What town are we in again? Somebody comes into your life, and you have to make a split-second decision. Am I going to get to know this person more? And I think Elvis was making that decision about us as well. He saw a couple who were kind of in a bind, and he knew he could help. And so he said, hey, why don't I just help you guys out this weekend? So next thing we know, we are driving Elvis's truck to dinner in Richmond, Kentucky.
Elvis might be an angel someday.
Elvis could be an angel.
That's right.
He's an angel to us tonight. And he brought us to this magical land down under. Another satisfying adventure in the outback. When life gives you onions, you make them bloom. So on Saturday, we woke up and we started thinking, where can we go see a football game? And we noticed that the University of Kentucky Wildcats were playing at home against the Akron Zips. And this turned out to be the perfect choice for a weekend football game.
Well, I think you've landed in a great spot. Well, first of all, we're glad to have you here in Kentucky. Here and all throughout the state of Kentucky, you're going to meet a lot of great people.
Yeah.
Down home, a lot of hospitality, willing to speak, willing to talk, willing to tell their story. And you know, I know you guys know where you've been traveling. Sometimes you get in those, the rig might break down, or you know, traffic, being a traffic jam, and you meet that person that blesses you in a certain way. You will find a lot of that in Kentucky. And just the camaraderie. You know, we all love football, of course, we're here, but it's the people. You know, it's the people that bring us here.
We had a fantastic time attending the Kentucky Wildcats game. We lucked into incredible seats, and the hospitality has been amazing. Kentucky has always had an absolutely dominant basketball program. So the fans approach football with kind of a healthy perspective. I really loved talking to different Kentucky fans who were sitting around us. They want to see good football. And yes, they do have an excellent team this year. But football is not treated with life or death urgency. That is reserved for basketball, which actually makes for a very enjoyable game day environment. while chatting with Kentucky fans, I learned something about this great state. In addition to basketball, Kentucky is most famous, of course, for two things: bourbon and horses. What do you think bourbon and horses have in common? I'll give you a moment to guess. It's the limestone water table in Kentucky. Kentucky water has a lot of natural limestone in it. With regards to bourbon, that limestone acts as sort of a natural filter, and it produces a cleaner tasting bourbon. For horses, limestone water has the benefit of giving them stronger bones because there's a lot of calcium in it. Some of the greatest race horses in the world are born and bred right here in Kentucky, and breeders want those horses drinking Kentucky limestone water for the first 2.5 years of their lives before they leave the state. So if you ever wondered why bourbon and horses were so big in the state of Kentucky, now you know. We were able to arrive on campus early for the game, enjoy the tailgating scene, and then go in and watch the Wildcats put in a great performance and win the game in a very enjoyable stadium environment. So you can hear they're playing My Old Kentucky Home after the game, but the really big rendition happens before the game. And singing this song before the game is an important tradition here at the University of Kentucky and in the state of Kentucky. So next morning, I'm relaxing in our Airstream, having my morning coffee when my phone rings. I look down and it's Elvis. And Elvis says, "Hey man, you want to go with me to crash a local party?" And I said, "Okay, sounds like fun. What do you have in mind?" And he said, "Well, there's some folks getting together after church to have lunch, and my wife's gonna be there, my kids, and my wife is Filipino, so there are gonna be a lot of Filipinos there." As many of you know, a few years ago, Chrissy and I visited the Philippines. I told Elvis this, and he said, "Oh really, where did you go in the Philippines?" And I said, "Well, we started out in a town called Dumaguete." And he said, "Really? My wife is from Dumaguete."
Hey guys, let's go eat. We thank you, Lord, for our hosts, them allowing us to be a part of their family. And we ask you, Lord, I pray this in your name, Father. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. It was super cool to go into this lunch and have lunch with Elvis and his wife Andresa and a great group of Filipinos in the Filipino community there in Richmond. The Bluegrass Filipino American Association.
Yeah. So you guys have like events or just
We do have events. We have get-together.
Yeah. Very beautiful too. Yeah. Very beautiful water and snorkeling.
Yeah, very clear water.
Yes.
Yes.
And this again makes the point that when you travel, it will connect you with people in ways you can never really predict. When we went to the Philippines, I had no idea it would somehow connect me with the Filipino community in Richmond, Kentucky. But it did. Then Monday morning rolled around. Shout out of thanks to the great folks here at Gates Ford Lincoln who were very accommodating for us under unusual circumstances. I want to especially thank Victoria and Kathy in the service department because they couldn't have been any nicer and we finally maneuvered our rig out of there and on our merry way. What did we learn in this experience? Well, for one thing we learned, you better keep an eye on your fickum. This episode really teaches us something about the importance of being flexible and being able to pivot.
Good to see you guys. We love watching Loloho every week when you guys have your videos come out. Keep up the great work.
You never know where Loloho will be broken down next.
Take care, guys.
All right, thanks. To pivot is to fundamentally change direction. We do this often when we travel. Now, was I happy that we had this problem with our truck? No, I was not happy at all. However, we ended up making some new friends and having some great experiences. We show you when things go wrong on our travels, and as I've said before, we have had many seasons of long honeymoon where we have traveled and nothing has really gone wrong. However, there have been plenty of times where things have gone wrong. I think the events of recent years have taught me the value of perspective. Some of you may remember that several years ago I was diagnosed with a pituitary tumor in my brain and went through a little bit of a health scare. And once you've gone through something like that, then having a mechanical problem with your truck, although annoying, is put in proper perspective. I won't be surprised if someday we get together again with Elvis and Andresa, but next time it may be over in Dumaguete in the Philippines. I really think that could happen. And so we wrap up yet another surprising episode of Long Honeymoon. As always, thank you guys for tuning in. We are continuing our tour of North America, and as you can see, these videos are kind of going to take on a life of their own. We are attempting to visit different college towns every weekend, and I guess the emphasis should be on attempting, because sometimes I guess things could happen, but barring any major calamities, we will continue to visit hot college towns in the weeks and months to come.
I can make you happy, make your dreams come true.
So let me know what you think about this video style.
Nothing that I wouldn't do.
Post a comment.
Go to the ends of the earth for you.
As always, thank you for tuning in. I am Sean. This has been yet another episode of Long Honeymoon, where we say, Loloho. This episode of Long Honeymoon was brought to you by Beauty Garden in Richmond, Kentucky, owned by Andresa Hayden. If you need a wonderful manicure or to have your hair done, go see Andresa in Richmond, Kentucky, and tell her that Sean and Chrissy sent you. Thanks.